Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to be trying a new format. Generally speaking, what takes up the vast majority of my time when making videos is finding good pieces of gameplay, or really recording my own gameplay and editing it all down and going through the process of turning my video essay into a proper video. But I also feel that doing so really limits how much content I can pump out, and also really kind of lowers my excitement towards doing it because it can be quite tedious. And hopefully, I want to hear your guys' feedback in the comment section. I'd love to hear what your guys' thoughts are. But this is what I'm going to be doing for this video. It might not stay, it might stick, who knows. But for now, yeah, let's get on to the video. For how large a role AI plays in games, it's surprising how often it's overlooked by the average player, and is usually only taken note of when it's visibly misbehaving or struggling. Today I want to take a deep dive into how good AI can encourage certain playstyles, or even bring entirely new mechanics and strategies into the gameplay loop. For the sake of this video, I'm going to be using AI from some first-person shooter games that I've played as examples. So let's move on to part 2. What makes good AI? Well, good AI should have a goal in mind when it's created. Depending on how AI is made, it will cause the player to act differently. During the development of Doom 2016, id Software originally had AI for the lower ranking or fodder demons that was aggressive and would hunt the player down. But during playtesting, they noticed that this caused players to back up during combat and run away from the overwhelming force of the enemies. So instead they changed the AI to remain mostly still, allowing the player to navigate the environment while ping-ponging off the walls and killing enemies as they go along, while still maintaining the challenge of having to dodge the enemy attacks. The goal of AI in Doom 2016 was to encourage players to move around during combat, charging face first towards danger as opposed to running away like many shooters of the time had taught us to do. id Software was able to cleverly tweak their enemy design, creating good AI that encouraged this kind of behavior from the player. Now let's look at an example of another game that has really great AI. Part 3, Good AI, featuring Halo 3. Halo 3, released in September 2007, has gone down in history as one of the greatest first-person shooters of all time, including its gameplay. In the campaign of Halo 3, the goal of the AI is to create unique encounters and strategic gameplay. The AI in Halo 3 is made up of many different types of enemies and adds strategy to the gameplay similarly to what you would see from the different pieces on a chessboard. All the AI in the game should work towards supporting or creating the game's combat loop. Here's a small portion of the different chess pieces you'll come across playing Halo 3. The Ungoi, better known as grunts, are reminiscent of pawns. The grunts are, well, grunts. They're weak, dumb, silly, and scared, and their AI shows this. They have little health and can be easily killed by most means. Grunts are rarely found on their own and tend to be seen with a brute squad leader. If their squad leader is killed, the grunts will panic and flee. Grunts can be quite a threat, however. You may run into suicide grunts holding plasma grenades, charging at you. In Halo, sinking grenades or plasma grenades deal a large amount of damage and are generally thought of as better saved for more powerful enemies such as elites and brutes. But if you stick a grunt with a plasma grenade, they're likely to panic, going running back towards their squad for help, killing more enemies in the process. That's just one example of an AI behavior that you can make use of and take advantage of during gameplay. The Jiralhane, referred to as brutes, are savage foes that are not to be trifled with. Brutes have additional protection in the form of energy shields, although theirs is not as advanced as that donned by the mighty elites, seeing that it does not recharge after being depleted. Brutes can often be found in packs, and leading squads of grunts and jackals. Brutes wield ranged weapons, however, once their energy shields are depleted, they will go into a berserk mode, dropping their weapons and going on all fours, charging at the player in ferocious leaps. Brutes will also go into berserk mode when stuck with a plasma or spike grenade, attempting to kamikaze the player as opposed to panicking and blundering like the grunts can be seen doing. A quickly timed headshot or melee can take them out when they're in their berserk mode, but both of these actions require considerable concentration, and berserking brutes can truly bring chaos to the battlefield. The Covenant's jackals may not be the prettiest nor strongest of folks, but what they lack in physical strength they more than make up for with their equipment and abilities. Jackals are known for their strong defense and can hold a choke point with impressive strength, even against the Master Chief. Jackals can be seen in the front lines wielding energy shields and being commanded by brutes. These energy shields will block incoming projectiles, and when combined with the Jackal's plasma pistols that can melt through shields, they can hold down an area quite effectively. But in order to shoot their plasma pistols, the shields have an indent, where their hands are unprotected. Shooting this spot will deal damage, and depending on the difficulty, is likely to cause them to flinch, stepping back, dazed and exposed for a headshot. Additionally, if a grenade is thrown behind them, the Jackal will jump out of the way and either end up disoriented and unorganized, or possibly dead after the explosion goes off. When their shield is depleted, Jackals will be seen panicking, running with their hands over their heads, trying to get to cover. All these different characteristics and behaviors allow the enemies to be seen not only as opponents, but as dynamic puzzle pieces in this puzzle that is the combat encounter. The AI in Halo 3 not only brings variety at a surface level with different types of enemies to fight against, but also on a much deeper level as players learn these behaviors and increase their skill past simple reaction time and aiming. Part 4. Bad AI featuring Doom Eternal. One thing I want to make it incredibly clear before getting into this section is that Doom Eternal overall does not have bad AI. In fact, Doom Eternal has some of the best AI I have ever played against in a shooter game before. Almost all the enemies do a fantastic job at supporting the goal of the AI, which is in this case to make sure that the player plays fast-paced and aggressively. Boss fights in the Doom games are a chance to break up the combat and offer something different. In the case of the Marauder, the boss fight encourages the players to take their time, hovering at mid-range, waiting for the Marauder to strike in order to land a blow on him. It's not the best boss fight we've seen in the recent 2 games, but it wasn't bad. The entire fight was you and the Marauder in a room, with some fodder demons occasionally spawning, only for the sake of being health and ammo boxes. The Marauder is a boss fight, meaning that fighting him would occur in a separate combat flow system, allowing the Marauder's AI to contradict many of the enemies that the player had faced beforehand, with the goal of encouraging the player to play more passively and slow, as opposed to the aggressive and fast-paced gameplay seen throughout the rest of the game. This means that the Marauder's AI allows variety, but it isn't compatible with an environment elsewhere in the game that isn't isolated like this boss fight, such as one with many of the other enemies in the game. And the developers at id decided to put him into tons of future encounters throughout the game. This decision was a major failure in an otherwise near-perfect game. When the Marauder appears, you can't help but feel annoyed, as your aggressive, fast-paced gameplay is brought to a halt, as you have to slow down and play passively. Additionally, it's really freaking hard to survive a fight with him, because during the process of slowing down and playing passively, you're weakening yourself to every other AI in the entire game that is trying to make you move quickly. I don't know how id Software managed to mess this up so badly, especially in a game that is so great where they clearly knew what they were doing. The direct contradictory of these 2 AIs having completely different goals leads to this being really bad AI design. I think that goes over pretty well about what make good AI and bad AI, along with some examples. It really shows that AI has to have a goal in mind, and every single part of it has to have a purpose. And when those ideas don't line up, stuff happens. And it's not always good.